Hello and welcome to another edition of the Scoutcast. A lockdown continues and we've got some tough decisions to make. Just who are our favourite 6 FPL players of all time? My name is Joe.
My name is Andy.
My name is Neale.
Hello, welcome Andy, welcome Neale. So Andy, tell us more about the tough task ahead of us.
Yeah, so we decided to kind of maybe reminisce. We could choose some current players, I suppose, but we're going to try and build a 6-a-side team. So 1 goalkeeper, 2 defenders, 2 midfielders, and 1 forward. Basically, kind of our favourite FPL players. Doesn't necessarily have to be the absolute best. I think we could all probably go back and just see how many points they all got and just pick from there. But it's kind of like who we've got good memories of. It's not massively strict on who we can pick, but there is just 1 player per team. But even that's not hugely strict. So we're not going to be so bad that you can't pick Salah for Liverpool because he also played for Chelsea, because obviously he did all the damage, I suppose, from an FPL point of view at Liverpool. Same, if you wanted to pick Sanchez for Arsenal or something like that. So that's kind of the kind of limited rules that we've got with this. So 1 team, the team that they did the most with. So there's probably going to be some favourites, I would say, from each team missing out. And then at the end, we're just going to catch up with virtual FPL as always.
Yeah, great stuff. Let's get stuck in. We're going to do it position by position: goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, and forwards. So let's start with the goalkeepers. So what we're doing here is I don't know if any of us are going to pick Nick Pope, but I'm just using him as an example of. So Nick Pope is currently top in FPL with 128 points, top amongst goalkeepers, that is. But who is our favourite of all time? Andy, let's go with you first.
So I picked Nick Pope.
Have you?
Yeah.
No way.
I was going to say, actually, like when we do podcasts like this, it's quite interesting because we could obviously all show each other beforehand, so we can make notes on each other's team. But I mean, usually we do it like this, where it's kind of blind, so you can kind of react to it. But I did pick Pope. To be honest, it's not really Pope. It's more a cheap Burnley goalkeeper. It's not Joe Hart.
Yeah.
Basically, Pope or Heaton, it could have been.
Okay.
They're just. I think like I started playing FPL in 2010. 2011 season. So there's been other keepers that have done well since then as well. Cheaper, I think Pickford when he was at Sunderland was a probably a better option than he has been at. I think it was Sunderland, before Everton. But yeah, they're just so reliable over the years under Dyche, and I would never spend money. And I don't think I ever have, apart from maybe late into a season on a wildcard or something, spent money on a premium keeper. So I had to pick a cheap keeper for this. And I remember, like, it was back when even Mark was on the Scoutcast. I remember him saying that the Burnley keepers are always good for bonus because of the way their defence plays. They're not really passing the ball out from the backs. They're not getting passing bonus and all that stuff. They're just hoofing it away. He's already got 11 clean sheets this season. That's the most in the league. It was Joe Hart, I think, in 2018-19. Before that, there was another 11 clean sheets for him. So he's consistent save points. And like I said, Burnley for clean sheets under Dyche is... it's just always good. So yeah, when I just the way I picked my players, I think for this was like I always tried to pick straight away without giving it too much thought. Who comes into my head straight away? And a Burnley goalkeeper had to be, and then Heaton's moved on. So yeah, Nick Pope for me, the one on the screen.
Yeah, well, what a coincidence. Yeah, as you said, I don't know your selection. I don't know Neale's selection. We don't know each other's, and so I just put Nick Pope up because he's the current leading goalkeeper. I know exactly what you mean about the Burnley keeper, because and Mark was exactly right. Is the way their defence plays. They traditionally they restrict teams to long shots, which are easier to save. Therefore, you get lots more save points. Therefore, you get bonus points. Therefore, a clean sheet hopefully as well. And there you go. You suddenly got a 9-point keeper most weeks. Well, I say most weeks. That's the aim for 4.5, and whether it's been Heaton or indeed Hart over the years. I mean, I agree. It's sort of Nick Pope, but it's also basically you might as well just put a Burnley flag up as well.
Yeah, pretty much.
Whoever's the Burnley keeper is your one. But yeah, Nick Pope has certainly proved it so far. Neale, your top goalkeeper, your favourite goalkeeper of all time in FPL, who is it?
It's a tough one, this, because when you think of FPL memories, your favourite moments, then the goalkeepers tend not to stand out. Sort of the last, they're almost like an afterthought of your team. Latterly, I've been much in the same as your camps, and that I've been selecting a budget goalkeeper, more dependent on save points than clean sheets themselves. I can't remember the last time I had a premium goalkeeper for any length of time, apart from like the odd double game week. Going back probably back end of the last decade, like late noughties or something. So yeah, obviously high scoring goalkeepers of all time will be something like Joe Hart. I think he's had the most appearances in the Dream Team, so it's an honourable mention. Fabianski, of course, everyone. He's been a sort of omnipresent figure, hasn't he, for 5 or 6 years, I think. He's always been there or thereabouts at the end of a season. Again, relying on more on save points than clean sheets themselves. I'm going to give a shout out here. I'm going to go way back to the very start of FPL, which was 2002, 2003. Now, many of you won't have long memories as I do, but we've seen from the World Cup of FPL tournament that we've been running that a lot of people do, because Henri got to as far as the semi-finals, which shows you how far a lot of people go back with FPL. I'm going to give a shout out to Brad Friedel, who was, he was in the Premier League for best part of 20 years. I think for starting out at Liverpool, and then Blackburn, I suppose, is where he was mostly known for. And then I think was he at Villa after that, and then sort of wound down his career at Spurs. But he's the highest ever scoring goalkeeper in FPL in terms of a single season.
Wow!
Now, of course, the scoring system was different back then, but I do have vague memories of owning him in the early noughties. He got 15 clean sheets in that first season. He scored. He's one of the select few goalkeepers who's actually scored in the Premier League as well.
That's the dream.
Yeah, I can't remember if I owned him for that week or not. But it wasn't one of these sort of... I think I'm right in saying it wasn't a hit and hope Begovic style.
It wasn't a wind-assisted one. It was just...
Yeah. So he's got the longevity, and he's got the individual season highlights in his corner, and I give a shout out to him. Weirdly, when this first got put on me, one of the first names I thought of was Marcus Hahnemann. Now, he's not by any stretch in the leading lights of Premier League goalkeepers of all time, but he was possibly before it was popular. I remember owning him when Reading were in the Premier League in the sort of the mid-noughties, and he must have been around about 4 million, 4.5 million. Racked up 13 clean sheets in that first campaign they were in the Premier League. So I've got fond memories of him playing between the sticks for Reading. I think I'm going to have a struggle to convince you that Hahnemann should be in an all-time side.
It's the thing is, it's our favourite players, isn't it? And that's the point. So you can't be right or wrong. No one can say, "Hey Neil, you're wrong with your opinion of who your favourite."
I think I might be in this case.
You could be wrong if you were stating a fact, saying you had the most saves over the last decade or something.
Yeah.
But you can't be wrong. So you could have the Reading man.
How many points did Friedel get? Did you have that? You said he got the most.
I did have it down. Yeah, I think it was 187.
Wow.
Oh wow,
Yes.
that is pretty huge for a goalkeeper. Yeah.
The caveat being that I don't know what the scoring system was like exactly back then. I think 15 clean sheets is obviously quite good, but Alisson got 5 more than that, or 6 more than that last season, for example. That wasn't the year he scored either, so I don't know how the bonus system was working.
It was man in the stands, wasn't it?
It was, but I don't know if it was a maximum of 3 points here back in 2002, or whether there was additional points or anything like that. I think obviously the Scout itself only goes back to 2007, I think, when Mark started it, and records from FPL I think started in 2006. So we've got very, very sketchy details of what happened. But this was I give a shout out to Top Mark, so he did some research into this, and I think this is partly from David Wardale's book, Wasting Your Wildcard, as well. I think some information in there. But 187 points in that season, which, however it came about, that's a very impressive score based on the other scores in that season as well.
I think it's fascinating because a lot of people who are watching and listening to this will their memories. So, for example, my first season was 2008. So the Brad Friedel glory days, which is a bit before me. But other people are, even more recent. They've been playing for the last 3 or 4 years, and so mentioning some of these other names that we focused on there, and some of looking back and saying. People probably laugh at us and say Joe Hart was a good option once, a good cheap option, but it's those types of players. So it's really good. I hope those listening and watching pick up on that this game's been going for a long time, and it's not just the current crop of players. Although Nick Pope is already a legendary keeper, really, if we look at it, and I suspect he's going to be it'll be lots of other favourites as well. Okay, my one now. So I've gone for my selections are based some on longevity, but also based on players that have just brought me joy, and even if they've just been short-lived, also fun to own. So for a goalkeeper, I've gone for longevity actually here, and I want cheap too. And the point Andy was making about the 4.5 or so, 5 million at a push. So for me, ideally they're going to be in a mid-table side. They need to bring me save points and bonus points. They need to be overlooked so that I can say, haha, I've got him and you haven't. That kind of thing.
Can I have a guess?
Yeah, okay, have a guess.
So I don't think it's Fabianski because I think Neale mentioned that. He didn't really say much. I'm going to go Ben Foster.
Yes, you've got him in one. Of course it's Ben Foster. I love Ben
It's
Foster.
a good choice, that. Good choice. 4.5 million
He is
rotation.
my favourite ever goalkeeper, and I've gone for him because of the longevity is incredible. So since I've been playing in 2008, he's achieved 600 plus scores. He's always been priced between 4.5 and 5 million. And he has been in my squad, I believe, every season that I could get him in, and he was a credible option. And that's many seasons. So that's pretty much a decade of Ben Foster for me, which I think is incredible for any player, even for a goalkeeper. It was West Brom, obviously, where he excelled for me. Player of the Year in 2011, for good reason. The club finished in 10th. And in 2012... and this was a moment of pure joy. So the thing with these cheap goalkeepers is you sort of rotate them a bit, but it's quite fun to just play them in the tough fixtures as well, and then they pull out a great score or something. Like in 2012 when he saved a Steven Gerrard penalty. So not many people have played him against Liverpool, so it's good to get occasional points for like that. So yeah, sign for Watford, more the same. I do like a good Watford goalkeeper as well. Mid-table. Cheap, lots of saves. There we go. And ignored as well. So Foster, I think, is an FPL legend for me between the sticks. This season's got 111 points so far. And guess his ownership?
Less than 5%, I would say.
I'll say 4.2%.
Well, Neil's actually been looking at the exact. He is indeed, and both of you are correct. It's 4.2%. Overlooked. So every time he saves a penalty like that, or he just simply plays and racks up another great season, a great season rank by the end in terms of FPL, I can say, I got Ben Foster. So there we go.
I can't believe how old he is. He's 37. I didn't realise it'd been around that long.
I know, so many years of Ben Foster. And he also appeared, give a shout out to another podcast, obviously Peter Crouch's one I've been enjoying during lockdown, and Ben Foster appeared on that. And it was a great interview they had with Ben Foster on that. We're talking about his time getting the quite severe hair dryers from Alex Ferguson in his Manchester United days. But of course he's in for me because of West Brom and Watford, and the same. Same for your choices as well. Mid-table, really, and that's
I like the Foster pick.
4.5 mid-table goalkeeper, no deviation there, but all three different ones. Let's move on to defenders. Well, maybe Andy's picked this guy again. Alexander-Arnold is currently top with 166 points, but who are our favourite two FPL defenders of all time? Let's go with Neale first on this one. Do you want to do? How should we do it? Should we do? You can do both, and then we do one at a time.
One each, I reckon. One each, because I reckon there's probably going to be some duplicates for this.
Neale, you go. Well, we'll go one at a time. You go first.
All right. Well, I've gone a bit wild card with this bit of a curveball with two of my selections, because obviously there were better players to choose from. Alexander-Arnold being one of them, Leighton Baines, all these names from our past. But I've gone for two defenders who immediately sprang to mind, who basically are living off their exploits in one season as budget assets. Now, I'll just name one of them before we pass on to somebody else. So this won't be a surprise because I've banged on about him for the best part of a decade. And it is another Alexander, not Arnold, but Graham. of Burnley.
Good choice.
So he was the original John Lundstrom.
Now,
he wasn't quite.
A lot of our viewers, listeners, they will not know of the legend that was Graham Alexander. So how legendary was he as an FPL?
I'm planning to name my firstborn after him whenever that happens. So if I ever do have kids, but he wasn't quite 4 million, so he wasn't quite a bargain bin defender like Lundstrom was, but he was 4.5. Came up with this was pre-Dyche Burnley. Was this one Coyle era? I think it might have been. But he was playing spent a lot of his time in midfield like Lundstrom does. Played as a defensive midfielder as well as at fullback. He was getting on in years. I think he was even late 30s in that season. But he was crucially a penalty-taking defender in FPL. So he was eligible for clean sheet points, which I discovered he didn't get a lot of. I think he only got a handful over that season. This wasn't the Burnley we know now, a little bit more attacking. But he was, as I said there, he was on spot kicks and set pieces. So he scored 7 goals from a starting price of 4.5 million. Now, we don't see that ever in FPL from a defender. Alonso sometimes from a much higher starting price. Even the likes of, I know Alexander and Robertson have got high assist counts, but they tend not to score a lot. But he was banging them in, 7 goals in that season. He's only in the Premier League for 1 year, but he was the first defender that sprang to mind when you sent me the agenda for today, and I think is what counts for a lot. I think your favourite memories are not necessarily the best players, but who delivered for you. As you said there, Joe, as well, it's a lot more if he's a differential. If you got on him early, like Lundstrom this season, got on when he was cheap before the bandwagon started. So probably my all-time favourite memory in FPL is Graham Alexander, and he scored 2 penalties and kept a clean sheet against Hull 2009 for 21 points before anyone had him but myself.
Wow.
And I think, weirdly enough, it was almost 10 years to the day that Lundstrom scored his 21-point haul as well, which was a nice little bit of symmetry there. But,
I do remember, I think I got an 18 point from him once, and I think I got that 21 as well, or like to think I did.
Potentially, yeah, because the one thing I don't have to hand is the exact assist stats. So he could have chipped in with a goal and an assist in another game.
Yeah.
We have the Premier League assists, but they don't necessarily mean fantasy assists. He's to this day. Perhaps I've embellished his legend over the years because he didn't get many clean sheets at all that season, but just 7 goals from a 4.5 million defender. I think I'll struggle to top that memory. Even Lundstrom this year didn't quite run him.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Lundstrom, because we mentioned when we were talking about the Meet the Manager videos in the last Scoutcast, we were talking about the advice of, when the game throws you a bone, you go for it, take that opportunity. Lundstrom is that opportunity now, and Graham Alexander was that opportunity there. 4.5 defender who takes penalties, and he's good at taking penalties.
Yeah,
and he takes a lot of penalties, and he scores other goals. He's just it's an opportunity that I think we all took up at some point during that season. Andy, what about you? Your first defender?
Yeah, so nowhere near as left field as Neale. I have gone for one of the players he's just mentioned. Also penalty-taking defender, Leighton Baines had to be on there. I think someone mentioned it as soon as you put the tweet up that I was going to talk about him. Because I started in 2010, 2011, that is basically when he was absolutely firing from an FPL point of view. He was playing before that, but I think this is roughly when he started getting penalties. And there isn't, apart from Brad Fiedel scoring a goal probably, there's nothing really better in my opinion than a defender that's on set pieces and penalties. That is the best. Forget Trent Alexander-Arnold, great player, he's probably going to go on to beat all kinds of records if they keep playing as they are now, but it's just, I don't know, those penalties, and he's still bombing up down the wing. It's not the same as Robertson and Trent, but I feel like he, in terms of when I've been playing, he was kind of the original Trent Alexander-Arnold. So he got 178 points, I think, in the 2010-2011 season. 5 goals, 11 assists. So that's 16 attacking returns. So to put that in perspective, this year, Trent Alexander-Arnold's on 14. Now, he's probably going to get more than 2 over the remaining games, you'd imagine. As Baines is pretty close to him. And Robertson last year who has got the record, I think, for defender points, 213. He only, obviously, it's still a good total, but he got 12 assists. So Baines got 4 more attacking returns than the all-time leading defender. Obviously, the big difference is the clean sheets. He was playing for Everton, not a Liverpool side, who are one of the best or the best team in the league at the moment. So in that season where he got 16 attacking returns, he only got 9 clean sheets to get those 178 points, whereas Robertson got 21 clean sheets. So obviously the big difference there. But if Baines was performing like that, being a team that was better defensively, there's no doubt in my mind he would be probably the top scoring defender as it is right now. So forget John Lundstrom. Yes, £4 million playing in midfield. I don't think anything really beats Baines for me. And then he backed it up the next season with 177 points, 5 goals, 7 assists, so another 12 attacking returns. So, and I really don't think your defender stepping up for penalties. It wasn't quite for longevity. It wasn't really the same. But Charlie Daniels, I mentioned in a recent video, I got an 18-pointer from him for Bournemouth, 4.5 million. One of those was a penalty, and he got an assist and a clean sheet and a 3 bonus.
Yeah, it's that. That
was an incredible.
Because you're looking at multiple routes to points. So, okay, well, this is going to be an easy one for my first one because it's Leighton Baines as well. I could not put.
I knew it would be on there.
Well, I could not have. There's no way I could not have Leighton Baines because it's not just in terms of the sheer number of points he got. It was just the sheer fun of owning them. And it was, as you say, it's great owning a penalty-taking defender, but it was great owning Leighton Baines. He was such a fun player to have, and he played all the time. He was absolutely, in his heyday, he was nailed on, week in, week out, and he was running up and down, crosses, assists. For ages there was, Seamus. See, Robertson or Alexander-Arnold, back in the day, it was Coleman or Baines, and that was a great thing. But they were still great. Both of them were great assets as well. So, but I still always think Baines was slightly better. I
knew you two were going to mention him. That's why I did. He is probably the greatest FPL defender of all time. I would agree. And the only reason I didn't mention him in earnest was because I knew he'd get a mention elsewhere.
Well,
I'm all for that.
I mean, I've got some more stats here. I mean, Andy's reeled off loads of great stats about him as well. So for me, I liked him because he was the first one where I thought, I don't care how much he costs. Sometimes with defenders, you think, oh, that's a bit expensive. I just did not care how much Baines cost. I just wanted him. He had 800 points. Eight seasons, he got more than 100 points. So longevity again. And 3 times he obviously topped 160, as Andy's mentioned. Since I've been playing 2008, he has scored 29 goals and 60 assists. So I could have had access to all of those if I'd have had him in my team for all of that time. But I had him for a lot. In 2012-13, he created more chances, 116, than any other player in Europe's top leagues. He's a defender.
Wow.
Wow. When my second son was born on March the 20th, it was a great day. But was the next day even greater? It perhaps was. It was when Baines scored his first Everton goal at Fratton Park, March the 21st. That was a brilliant weekend. Got a son, got a goal from Leighton Baines. He was the original never captain, never bench, but arguably perhaps we should have captained him. Now I'm going to be cheeking, be the first to go up for my second.
Reverse order sounds
reverse
good.
order because it's going to.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's going to be slightly quicker because Andy's already mentioned it. It's Charlie Daniels is my second most favourite defender of all time because he took penalties. He had assists in his locker too. He was great on and off for multiple seasons. Well, 3, 2015, 16, 17. That was the Charlie Daniels heyday. He lost his place and injury halted him, but he was always around sort of the 4.5 million mark, always great value. And I remember those days when we discovered he was on penalties and he started taking them and started racking up these huge scores. And it saved my game weeks, so many weeks where you get blanks from the big players, and then suddenly Charlie Daniels stepped up with an 18-pointer. Well, and even when I didn't own him, I celebrated the fact that he scored. I know he always, to me, felt like, some players, they feel like they're yours. And I always felt like he was my player, so I didn't mind if he scored and I didn't own him because it wasn't. I like the guy. So here's some more stats for him. Let's look at this one. So 2016-17, 134 points he got. So 2016-17 that is. 4 goals and 3 assists and 10 clean sheets. Imagine that. This was a time when Bournemouth got clean sheets as well. 2015-16, another great season. 3 goals, 5 assists and 7 clean sheets. And he was great for bonus points as well. That 2015-16 season, he got 20 bonus points across the season and 14 and 16-17. So lots of stats there at Charlie Daniels. As Andy said, exactly the same reasons as Leighton Baines. It's like a mini Leighton Baines, the Leighton Baines of the South. But yeah, that's my
good season.
Yeah. What are we doing? We're doing reverse order, so we're going back up to
me again.
Andy. Andy. Yeah, who's the second defender?
Yeah, look, I've not gone left field again. Thinking of defenders that are fun to own, and obviously the one I'll be the Liverpool were the hardest team to pick one player for me. So I haven't gone for any of their defenders for this one. So I've gone for a current player who's not necessarily always been in the side this season, is Marcus Alonso. I think when you talk about fun, yes, Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold, it is great the amount of points they rack up from assists and stuff, but you want to see a defender scoring goals, I think, and there's not much better than it recently and in the last kind of 4 or 5 years than Marcus Alonso. Obviously, hasn't really played too many games this season, only 10, but even then, his points per match is 7, which is higher than Trent Alexander-Arnold. So it's a smaller sample size, of course, but if he got a bit more time, who knows what he could have done this season under Lampard. But it was under Conte that he got in when we played that wing-back system. It's not that at least since I've been playing FPL, it's not that no team has ever played wing-backs, but I feel like that was when it kind of became cool again, at least, since I've been playing FPL. So he was put on that left wing-back role, 6 goals, 5 assists in the 16-17 season, 177 points. And obviously the key he had over someone like Baines is he played for a team that could keep clean sheets as well. So 15 clean sheets. Then the next season was 7 goals, 2 assists. So it's not very often that your defender scores that many goals in a season. Another 13 clean sheets. And then even last season, 2 goals, 8 assists, 14 clean sheets. So I think in terms of fun, Baines was good because he was on penalties, but to be able to score kind of 6-7 goals in a season just from kind of a left wing back spot, Alonso is probably the one that stuck out.
I was going to say, there was that game, wasn't there? I remember there was a particular game where it was against Chelsea won a terrible run, and then I think it was against Hull, and they just mixed it up a bit and they went wing backs, and Alonso came in, and suddenly it was just, and that was it. And
I think they played 3 or 4. I think it's quite close to the start of the season they changed, but I think they played the first 4 or 5 games, something like that, as a back 4. Because if you ask any Chelsea fans, and it's probably why he got dropped this year, he's not actually that good. But obviously, as we've said millions of times, as an FPL player, you don't really care about that if they're bombing forward and getting into the area. When I thought about defender moments, bringing in Alfie Mawson for a hit and him smashing a volley against Leicester, that was a good memory, but I didn't feel like I could put him in the team based on one memory because he didn't even have that amazing of a season, but that was definitely a good defender memory that I thought that came to mind. But yeah, Marcus Alonso, like I said, again, it's not a left field pick, but in terms of fun defenders to own, he's definitely been up there in the last few years for me.
Yeah, no, I can't agree. I haven't got him in my team, obviously, but a deserved place, definitely. And I remember when they switched and Alonso came in, and then it was just wow. And every time he was on a free kick as well, you thought, you could get this one.
Didn't he score? I'm sure he scored 2 free kicks in one game. I don't know if it was Spurs as well. It was ridiculous. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I'm sure he scored 2 free kicks in one game.
It was a sheer number of 15 plus scores, 15 to 20. He wasn't, a Graham Alexander level, but he was, if you're getting 15 plus points for a defender, that's a really good game week, and that's because of him. Neale, who's your second favourite defender of all time?
I think you pretty much already covered who you could argue are the 2 best FPL defenders, certainly in the last decade of the 2010s. There's others with perhaps as good claims before that. John Terry, I think, has had the most ever dream team appearances. For example, Ivanovic, we've got it was almost like Alonso these days, getting a lot of attacking returns from full back. Vidic was, I think, 8 million at one season, which I think was a reflection of how many points he used to score. I think my job in this podcast is to be the sort of the loony guest who they get on Question Time, the fifth guest, who just trots out ridiculous suggestions. So I'm going to suggest Pascal Chimbonda.
Okay.
This isn't in any way.
I'll tell you now, if Apple Bonkers is watching this podcast or listening, he will love your pick. Sure, he's mine and Joe's. Absolutely.
So yeah, Chimbonda, why?
Well, this is the sort of subgenre of favourite cult players, rather than anyone who's going to challenge a Hall of Fame six-a-side team. I think we've pretty much covered that already. I think Baines and Alonso would be two of the leading candidates. Chimbonda isn't going to get in that, but again, when you sent me the notes through, Joe, and you said your favourite players of all time, Chimbonda was one of the first names to come to mind. Again, I think this predates FPL's record. So this was a 2005-2006 season. Mm-hmm. He stayed in the Premier League beyond that. He moved to Spurs. I think he was at Sunderland briefly as well. Mm-hmm. But it was his year at Wigan when they first came up, for those with longer memories. Again, he was a budget defender. I can't remember what price he was exactly, but I would suspect it was 5 or less, given that it was a newly promoted team. He scored twice, I think, which isn't fantastic, but I chipped in with a handful of assists as well. But 13 clean sheets. Double figures for clean sheets in a newly promoted side. And again, much like Alexander, it was to do a lot with, I think, ownership at the time. He was a relatively low-owned player before Wigan went on a ridiculous run early in the season, where they were sort of challenging with the upper echelons of the Premier League. I did have it written down. I lost it already, but they won something like 7 or 8 games in a row, and it was a sequence of clean sheets within that. He scored twice within that run. So I'm even narrowing it down from a full season down to a sort of 2 or 3 month period where he was. I hate to use the word essential, but he was almost that, because he was so cheap. He was delivering at both ends of the field, and it's just a favourite memory, if nothing else. And he is someone who would threaten a cult FPL 11, if not an all-time greats list. But I'm here. This is my role today, just to chip in with ridiculous.
I like that though, that you've not even the whole season, because you're actually just reminding me now of there was Chris Brunt a few seasons ago, and he got like 7 to 10 points every week for like 7 to 8 weeks, and I had him in for all of them. And it was such an incredible run. I completely forgot about it then. So you just said because the thing is, it is hard to think about every single season, because we don't need players all season long in our team. So yeah, that's a good pick there. And Chris Brunt, you just reminded me of, that was a lovely season.
I've got one of the slightly more sorry, Joe. One of the more serious suggestion, and that was Julian Lescott.
Nice shout out that.
Good.
He sort of, you can think of the latter day Lescott with his accidental tweeting and his comical performances at Sunderland, but he was brilliant. I think the back end of the noughties, when he was playing for Everton first, and then moved to Man City. So he spanned across those 2 seasons. I've got his season history there. I've dug up from the internet. He scored 8 goals and got 2 assists in one season. I think it was his last at Everton. And then moved on to Man City. He scored 6 years in a row. He scored 4 the next season, and then 3 a couple of seasons later. Was regularly chipping in with clean sheets at Everton, and then City. This is when City were in their first era of title-winning success under Mancini. Regular bonus hauler as well, and never quite at. He was a premium defender for a few years, but never quite the top tier. Like Baines and Vidic and Terry were. I did think he started one season above 7 million, but for the most part, he was around about 6.5. 6, that sort of mark. So he's got as many Dream Team appearances as Baines. So this, for the uninitiated, this is the high scoring players in each position at the end of the season. So I think he's got a decent show.
Yeah, no,
I actually had him that. Go on. Sorry,
I was just going to say I completely agree. One of my favourites over the years, or often in my side. He was great. Yeah.
I actually had him down as a notable mention as well, because again, outside the Liverpool players last year, who are obviously just on a different level, he actually holds the record for the most points by a defender. Because John Terry, I think, would be an obvious pick. I think a lot of people would kind of assume that he would have it in those kind of, he got 196 points, John Terry, in that 04-05 season when Mourinho first came in. But Jolie and Lescott actually matched that. So outside of Robertson and Van Dijk last year with over 200 points, Lescott's actually the next highest scorer, which I don't think many people would probably realise or even think of him. But yeah, he was incredibly consistent.
Yeah, he was excellent. And of course, there's one other player you mentioned about a good half a season, and perhaps the greatest half a season defender of them all was Gareth Bale, who obviously went on to, I can't remember where he went off to in the end, but do you remember there was that season where he was listed? Well, he was listed defender originally. He was a left back originally, and then at some point something clicked with Harry Redknapp, I think it was the manager then. Was like, hang on a minute, let's move him up a bit, and suddenly he was a forward stroke left winger, scoring every week. The Gareth Bale we all know. But somehow, I can't remember what his price was. It was something like 5 million.
Yeah, it was very, very cheap. I think it was around that.
Very cheap. He may have even gone down in price as well, because I believe they famously couldn't win when he was playing for a little while. I mean, it only lasted for half a season, because the next season he was a midfielder, justifiably, and he could have actually become a forward. But like Lundstrom. The Welsh Lundstrom, what an opportunity that was. So there's a lot of good choices there, actually, a lot of differences, even though I think Leighton Baines, for many people, well, me certainly, is just the one. He's the one that all defenders seek to be. Let's move on to midfield. Now I've got a familiar face here who is top currently, and he may well be in some of our selections. He may well be in other people's selections as well. Mo Salah is top with 186 points amongst midfielders. We're getting used to him being top amongst midfielders. But who are our favourite two FPL midfielders of all time? Who's going next?
I'll go first if you want.
Come on then.
I think this is probably the only kind of left field pick on my list, and I wouldn't be surprised if someone else has him. So he's not that left field. Okay. But when I think of midfield, so every team needs a budget midfielder. You can't just fill it with premiums. I think that would be too easy. So this is a guy who, from my first ever season, 2010, 2011.
I know this is.
I always mention him, so everyone will know who it is. Charlie Adam, the ultimate cheap. So I won't mention the other cheapies that I've got as notable mentions. So I don't want to keep mentioning the ones that other people might have. But I couldn't remember what his price was, and I assumed it was probably around 6 million. But it was actually 5 million that he started, because I think back in those days, newly promoted sides, because he came up with Blackpool the season before, their players tended to be a lot cheaper than they would be now. I think a Charlie Adam now would probably be price straight at like 6 or 6.5, because they would know he was kind of the main man. So I actually, to find out his price, I started Googling him, and I found an old Scout article by Paul, and it was called The Watch List, and it said, central to the team's success has been the club's playmaker Charlie Adam. The ex-Rangers man sits on 38 points in FPL, the third highest scoring midfielder in the game so far. I can't remember what game this was, but it was quite early on, behind only Florent Malouda and Nani. So he was the third highest at that point. And he's 5.2 million, but he started at 5 million, and he got 192 points that season. Blackpool got relegated as well. They didn't come bottom, but they came second from bottom. And 192 points for 5 million. He was on penalties, he was on free kicks, he was on corners. He took absolutely everything, and obviously went to Liverpool the next season. And then some of the other things from another article, actually, I think on Scout, was he got into basically the team of the season. So only 3 other players got more than 30 bonus points that year. He got 45. Now, this was when Man in the Stands was there. Again, I've talked about this before. So, some person watching the game would choose who got the most, and he literally just had to step on the field. Like 45 bonus points, that means he's averaging more than 1 a game, which is just absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, he stepped on the pitch, he would get 3 bonus points. That's what it felt like anyway. I had to put a budget midfielder in, and to be honest, he probably stood out ahead of everyone else, to be honest, even premiums. He is the one I remember, 1 season wonder. It was just ridiculous. 5 million, 192 points. I don't think there's probably many enablers who have done better than that for me.
Yeah,
he was my suggestion as well, Andy. He was one of my 2. He was in the Premier League for another 7 seasons after that. I didn't realise.
Yeah, Liverpool and Stoke, wasn't it?
Yeah. Never quite reached those heights again, but Yeah, it was. I think it was the starting price that swayed it over someone. For example, like Michu, who might get a mention later. I think Michu was 6.5. But yeah, ended up in the end of season dream team, and yeah, 12 goals. Did you mention that, Andy? I think at least 9 assists, because I haven't got the fantasy assists to hand, but that's how many orthodox assists he got according to Opta. So at least 21 attacking returns, and probably
It was ridiculous.
Yeah, that is probably. I would wager. I'm trying to work out the maths. Probably the best value FPL asset ever. I think for the totals compared to the starting price.
So
Can I just really quick? Sorry, really quickly, because I just want to take something else from the article because it just made me laugh. So it just said Adam comes in at 5 point. So this is obviously when it's just started. So he comes in at 5.2 million, owned by just 9% of FPL managers. Such a low price means that in terms of value, he's joint top with West Brom's Peter Odemwingie. So he was obviously doing okay. And then what I thought I'd do is I go to the first page of the article on Scout, and I see some of the comments. And this one from Baines on Toast made me laugh. Not because he's stupid or shouldn't have made this comment. It's just what every FPL manager would do at the time and still does now. I haven't bought Charlie Adam yet because I couldn't bring myself to play him every single week. Would almost certainly miss out on some serious points as a result. And that is it. Because he was 5 million, you didn't want to play him every single week. And that happens every single season. So that comment kind of made me laugh because I thought I would probably do the same. I probably did do the same for a while.
Yeah, I mean, so just to clarify, Neale, he's one of your two as well, Charlie Adam.
He was, yeah. I mean, I've got as most of you have, a list of honourable mentions, and I'll discuss more of them later on. But he was. I thought I was being clever by picking him, but obviously not. He's still quite a popular figure, even 10 years on.
Well, I'll go with my next one, and I'm not being clever here. I've simply picked my favourite ever FPL player. Many of others too. I had a real trouble. You're going to know who it is when I say the team. I had real trouble picking a Chelsea player. That's how amazing Chelsea have been since I've been playing.
That's my other pick.
Yeah, 2008 to now. Chelsea have been such a great source. Drogba was fantastic for me. He won me the Fantasy Football Scout Cup. I think he got me my first top 10,000 finish, and won countless mini leagues for me. He was incredible. Alonso, as you mentioned, Ivanovic would have been, if we'd have, I could probably just filled it with Chelsea, to be honest. They're just so good. But it's got to be, for me, Frank Lampard. It's absolutely unbelievable how many is what he did. So from 2008, when I started, he's the most reliable captain shout in the game, I think, up until about 2014. If you owned him and, say, Rooney or Ronaldo or Suarez, then half the job was done each week. You basically had two of the best players, and Lampard was one of them always for 6 years while I've been playing. For the first 6 years, 147 goals at Chelsea. Some amazing highlights were his 28 points against Aston Villa, 27th of March 2010. Particularly incredible for me because I captained Drogba that day. I'm just going to put the picture. This is the BBC report of that. So you can kind of see, eagle-eyed people will see what happens there. It's quite nice to see, a team. So Chelsea won 7-1 at Villa. 27th of March 2010. Lampard, Malouda, Kalou. Lampard, 90 minute plus one. And you can see with the substitute appearances there, Drogba was an unused sub. So when Kalou came on the 76th minute, I knew that my vice-captain, Lampard's 28 points, or whatever it was going to be, it was 28 points in the end, I was going to get double that. So the 76th minute of this match is probably my favourite ever FPL moment of all time. And yes, it was partly because Drogba was wonderful in not playing, but it was because of Frank Lampard. And I think so many times he got me braces. He's a midfielder. And so many times. Neale, I guess you're the same. Frank Lampard's your second one. Yeah.
Even my clever dictionary with Pascal Chambonda and Graham Alexander, I couldn't really look past Lampard because not only is he possibly the greatest FPL asset of all time in terms of achievements, and he was voted that incidentally in our recent World Cup of FPL vote that we had on site. But it's some of my favourite moments have come from Lampard, as you just said there. The probably the pinnacle was another huge win from I think the same season, 2009-10. it secured me my an elusive mini league title, which I hadn't won. It was a work league, which was very, very competitive. One guy had a monopoly on it for years. But this was an 8-0 well against Wigan on the last game of the season. I think Drogba scored a hat-trick that day, but Lampard scored a penalty and then I think set up at least 2 of the goals, so it was a double-digit haul. And I capped him in, and I can remember him. I can remember praying to every deity going that he converted that penalty. And once that went in, I knew I'd won that mini league. So that goes hand in hand with favourite FPL moments as well as everything else he's accomplished in the game. I think the first 7 seasons of FPL's existence, he was in the dream team in 6 of them. Wow. He was the highest scoring player in 3 of those seasons as well. So, and in every possible way of measuring it, he is arguably the greatest FPL asset of all time. And I think the fact that I know Salah's beaten that total since in 2009-10 when he scored 284. You've got to remember Lampard was doing that from basically central midfield. Yes, he got forward to sort of edge of the box territory, but Salah's always been, even though he has been on the right, he's been the most advanced of Liverpool's 3 forwards. And if you do deserve some extra credit for scoring all those points from further back, I think he deserves it. Of course, he was on penalties. Of course, he was on free kicks, corners. But he was. I can't look past him. I think for everything else, all the brilliant midfielders have been before and since. Sanchez, I've got some fond memories of him as well, especially in double game weeks. Yaya Toure. I think Lampard probably tops a lot of them.
Indeed, yeah. Andy, who's your second midfielder?
Yeah, so I couldn't pick a Chelsea player because I decided to take Alonso in defence. And to be honest, like Lampard's, like Neale said, 6 scores were kind of literally the 6 seasons before I started playing. So I didn't want to pick him anyway because I've not really got any memories. He was still good after 2010, but not maybe quite as good. And honourable mention, like Mo Salah, I know it's recent, but he is on course to get more than 250 points 3 times. I don't think any player's ever done that. So if he plays a couple more seasons after this and does it, he will top Lampard, I think, for me. But he's not quite there yet. But that's just an honourable mention. I haven't picked him. I've actually picked someone Neale just mentioned, Alexis Sanchez. I wanted to go for a big hitter. The other one I thought of, because I'm not letting people put Gareth Bale in as a defender. He is a midfielder for this, I think. So Gareth Bale's one of those players, like if he had kept playing, he'd almost certainly be in there because he got that 249 points, I think, just before he left, and almost came out of nowhere, like you said, like ridiculous that they were on this losing streak that when he was in the team, then he became one of the best players in the world. But I have gone for Alexis Sanchez. Now, obviously, he's played for Man United. I didn't really do anything, of course, much to my disappointment. But at Arsenal, he was absolutely incredible. And I don't know if it was the first season triple captains. I didn't triple captain him. I don't like getting points, so I didn't put it on him. I think it was the first season they were available, and there was a ridiculous double game week where people had Kane and him. I'm almost certain it was Kane and him, and he scored something like 25 or 26 points, and he did that quite often that season. I think 264 points was his highest, 24 goals and 11 assists, and he was one of those midfielders that, if they did get put up front, which didn't happen a huge amount, but it did for a while under Wenger. I think it was Wenger. Yeah, it must have been. He actually did necessarily better, but he was as good. And in some cases probably was a little bit better depending on the team he played, whereas we saw with players like Hazard maybe didn't. And I did think about swapping Alonso out so I could put Hazard in, because I think Hazard, maybe because social media has been around more, did get put down as a troll quite a lot, but actually he was incredibly consistent and very, very good, and to be honest probably deserved a place in this from one of us. But yeah, I've gone for Alexis Sanchez. I think he was just so good at Arsenal. Didn't necessarily always get the minutes. I think he would have got a couple more higher scores if he'd had, because he played like 3,200 minutes that 264-point season. He didn't really do that any other season. But yeah, Arsenal player for me, Alexis Sanchez. I think he was brilliant. I just wish he'd done it at Man United.
Yeah, I mean, he's just an explosive player as well. I mean, there are midfield is where the tough choices have to be made, I think, and almost in a way, I wish we could have had 3 and just accepted Lampard, and then we could pick 2 others. So it's quite hard to come up with another one. So
no De Bruyne, no David Silva. David Silva's never hit 200 points in a season.
So we've got
never a
couple of Charlie Adams votes, a couple of Lampard votes. We've got Sanchez. So I'm my second choice is here, and it's a midfielder who was excellent value. When he played as a forward, boy, did he score. He is a legend, and you can tell certain legends because in FPL, because they become synonymous with something. You mentioned Sanchez with the triple captaincy. When you think of double game weeks, which midfielder do you think of?
Oh, okay. Clint Dempsey.
I
was wondering, until you said the double game week, I couldn't figure out who it was.
Every time I think of double game week, I think of Clint Dempsey because it may have only been once, but it was just incredible. But it was more than once. He kept pulling out the bag, great scores during, and of course a lot of us owned him, but we never captained him. We captained someone else who got much less points than Clint Dempsey. The original Captain America in FPL, he was forward-listed midfielder, scored a ton of goals, and it was a mystical ability to do well in these double game weeks. January 21st, 2012 was probably one of my favourites. Fulham 5, Newcastle 2, Clint Dempsey hat-trick. That's just a great mid-priced midfielder for a mid-range team pulling out some enormous score. That's exactly what FPL is about, getting and nailing that type of player. So while at Fulham, he scored quite an obscene amount of goals, actually. So the 2011-2012 season, 17 goals and 7 assists, and 12 in the season before with 3 assists there. And he's obviously a midfielder. He's getting that extra point for a clean sheet. It was actually, I sort of had him before Frank Lampard when I thought fun midfielders to own. But as I said, like, so much choice. I mean, I could have had Gerrard, could have had Ronaldo, we could have had Fabregas. There's a whole bunch of great legendary midfielders. You remember the Holy Trinity? Who are the Holy Trinity? Can you remember?
Ronaldo, Lampard, Gerrard, wasn't it?
There we go.
Slightly before my time, I think.
And that was it. That was when I first started playing. If you had, I usually like to have a balanced squad. That first season or two, no, just pile everything into 3 players and forget the rest. It's just 3 players and some blokes, and it was an incredible time as an FPL manager. But I mean, when you've got Ronaldo and Lampard and Gerrard, that's it. That's your lot. I mean, it's almost, you could just...
Gerrard. Yeah, no, it's funny because Gerrard's an interesting one because I looked at midfielders for a video, and I kind of looked at total season points, and I think this just shows why total season points are not the be all and end all. Because Steven Gerrard, I think I've got it right, unless there was another season where he did more and I don't have it on the list, but his highest total season score was only 216, which is actually, compared to a lot of the great midfielders, is actually quite low. I guess it's the same as anything. You get him in at the right price at the right time over a period of games, like you said, he's on penalties and stuff. That's really good. But compared to some of the greats, like Bale got 249, Mahrez 240. Gerrard was actually quite a way behind, but he was nailed, and you always knew he was going to pull it out of the bag with penalties, I suppose. But so I thought that was quite interesting when you mentioned Gerrard. Like, he was part of the Holy Trinity, and I knew that even though I didn't play at that time. But actually, didn't, in terms of season totals, he never had a huge season as far as I know.
And I think Fabregas was the one challenging that trinity. I can't remember. I don't think Fabregas and Ronaldo's, I think they sort of dovetailed each other. When Ronaldo eventually left, Fabregas became more of the sort of... It was never, the Holy Trinity was never the same, but it was those 3, and there was some real greats there. We ready to move on to forwards?
I'll give one last shout out to a figure from further back in time, Morten Gams Pedersen from the mid-noughties. Achieved a lot with Blackburn. Again, records don't go back that far, so I can't check out his price, but I can't imagine him ever being more than, say, 8.5 million. But yeah, one season he scored, I think, 9 goals and got 5 assists, and that's just the orthodox assists from a mid-price starting point. Was on set pieces, I seem to remember, as well at Blackburn. Was there for much of the noughties, so I think he was someone who, if folk have got longer memories, I sort of, my mind goes back to him. Was perhaps the Dempsey of his day, I think, before Dempsey arrived at Fulham. But I think, other than that, I'd be clutching at straws I had Martin Petro written down. I don't know why. I think he wasn't a very consistent figure, but I remember some individual hauls from him back in the day. And Michu, of course, I think I've already mentioned, probably the best one-season wonder ever. 18 goals, I think 3 assists from a starting price of 6.5 million. I had him from game week 1 as well. So again, it's those memories of getting him in before the bandwagon started and getting him in at a reasonable price as well. So an honourable mention.
In the live chat, Thomas Shaw has quite rightly mentioned Yaya Toure and Ramsey, 2 of my favourite great for one season players. And they were the great players of surely they can't keep scoring, and they kept scoring week in, week out. If you owned them both, it was great. And Yaya Toure, it was just no one understood it because he just shouldn't have been scoring that amount, but he had like often 1-2 shots a game, goal. Well done, people who like Thomas who can remember the glory days of Yaya Toure. There. Let's move on to forwards. So top of the forwards currently is Jamie Vardy. Currently at the summit with 167 points, but who is our favourite ever FPL striker? Andy, just one. We just got one here. So who's your favourite?
Yeah, this was tough. And having looked into forwards recently, I think they're actually quite hard done by in terms of how many attacking returns they get versus their points. There's a lot of seasons where forwards, even when you include assists as well, have outscored some of the favourites like Lampard and stuff. But obviously they don't get the extra point for the goal, clean sheet, so they kind of lag behind. But this was the first player on my team, and this is basically what stopped me getting Salah or Trent. Luis Suarez. Luis Suarez, for me, best ever FPL season. Better than Lampard's 284, better than Mo Salah's 303, 295 points in 2013-14, 55 attacking returns. So it's 25 fantasy assists. He wasn't on penalties either, because obviously Gerrard was around. So a lot of those assists, no doubt, were for Gerrard penalties. But 25 fantasy assists, 30 goals. So straight away, if he was listed in midfielder, there's an extra 30 points for those goals. Bonus might have been different, I know, but that would have probably would have taken him past Salah. So I think 8 points behind Salah's best ever record. I think this was a better season for me. 55 attacking returns is just ridiculous. And the other thing was he missed the first 5, I think it was 5 or 6 games of the season because he was suspended from the biting, I think it was. So it was just ridiculous. Like he for me, like I don't care. He was essential that season. He's set and forget captain. If he was going to play someone like Norwich, I would expect at least a hat trick, or I wouldn't be happy.
Back-to-back hat tricks against Norwich.
Yeah. You just knew he was going to do it. Like obviously now, you get a team like Liverpool playing Norwich. Yes, you're going to captain Salah or Mane, but you don't know which one's going to get the points. You knew Suarez was going to get points in those games, and obviously it was a bit of a weird way how he even came to Liverpool because they sold Torres. I actually watched an interview recently with Carragher, who said they couldn't believe they were getting 50 million for Torres. Obviously, good player, but they kind of thought he was maybe a little bit past it at that point and hadn't been good for that season. They sold him for 50 million. And yes, they did buy Andy Carroll, which wasn't the greatest use of money. But Suarez was 22 million they got him for. And a bit like Gareth Bale, if he'd stayed at Liverpool, he would have broke all kinds of records, I think. So he was the first person on my team. I knew I wasn't going to go for Salah or Trent because I was going to have Luis Suarez in. And yeah, just wish he stuck around for longer. Essential captain, set and forget captain. He's the one that springs to mind that season. It was just absolutely ridiculous, to be honest. You think the same, Neale?
Yeah. This was my sensible suggestion. I think, as you mentioned there, Andy, the fact he didn't start till game week 6, I think points per match. I think he beat Salah's record-breaking season. I know that isn't a measure that many people will go by, but it was a ridiculous period of that season. I think a 4-game week period where he scored 77 points across 4 matches. It had everything that season. It had the consistency of returns. I think 27 of his 33 games he scored at least something, a goal or an assist. There was a double game week haul in that as well. To add gloss onto it, there was a 25 points against Cardiff and Sunderland. Numerous hat-tricks, double figures for double-digit hauls. Just everything. And I think, as Andy said there, in terms of total number of attacking returns, that knocks Salah's season into the shade, I think, by some distance. And they've been around in the Premier League for a similar amount of time, Suarez and Salah. And yes, Salah's going to beat Suarez's points total. because he's a midfielder. But yeah, there was something about that season. I think that was just unforgettable.
Do you know what puts me off Salah? And this sounds weird, but what puts me off one of the greats of FPL? But whenever I think of Salah on Mane. Whenever I haven't owned Salah, I've just owned Mane instead. It doesn't matter which one. It's simply the role. And I also think Salah's maybe one season away from real greatness. But I think when you've got that, but with Suarez, Sturridge was an add-on for a while. Getting Gerrard's penalties was an add-on from Suarez's assists and goals. But I think with Salah, you can make do without him and still do really well. But I don't think you could have done with Suarez. He's my choice as well. It's just unanimous because
it was difficult, wasn't it, for forwards? I think.
So I mean, I've got him in. I could have got if I didn't have Lampard, I would have had that would have freed up a Chelsea space. I would have gone for Drogba. I really enjoyed owning Didier Drogba over the years, but Suarez for me was a perfect FPL player because when he played, he scored points. When he didn't play, there was some small barren patches, but on the whole, he scored you points if he played. And as you said, is it going to be a hat trick? Is it going to be a brace? And when he wasn't playing, it was usually because of off the pitch issues like biting and whatever. So you knew he wasn't going to play, so you could just transfer him out, and then you could get him back in again when he was ready to play. There's also a thing in FPL with Liverpool and Manchester United. There is still a percentage, I'm not saying a big, but a percentage of FPL managers who are Liverpool fans who will not get a Manchester United player, and that's the other way round as well. And there were a lot of people who say, I will never get Suarez in because of X, Y, Z. Great, okay, well, I'll just have his points, and other people won't. So no sentimentality there. He was just simply a points machine. He scored a hat-trick every 20 games in the Premier League, which I believe is the best rate the Premier League has seen. He's one of my best runs in FPL, so me personally as well. So he joined in January 2011, July 2014 he left, 3 incredible years, and during that time my ranks were 4K, 1K and 840, and I put that squarely down to Suarez. Simply owning him and captaining him, and then when he was off for whatever reasons, get someone else in. Fantastic. I think that's the only one we're completely unanimous on.
The other thing with him as well was because I think the previous season he scored 212, so he didn't. I think I'm almost certain he was about 9.5 million that year where he got nearly 300 points. It's about around that, maybe 10. He didn't get up to the kind of 12, 13 million that we've seen with Kane and stuff. So it was incredible. I mean, there's got to be some notable mentions here. Okay. I mean, this was the toughest spot for me. Like Sergio Aguero is just insane. Like he is one of those players that when you look at season totals, it definitely does not tell the whole story because hasn't necessarily been obviously nailed on the last couple of years. In periods at least, and obviously injury record is not good, so he's never got anywhere near 295 points. But I bet if we had the list of points per match, he would be right up there. I think he is the highest Premier League for points goals per game. Obviously, you got to take into account assists as well. Is one of the best in the Premier League, if not the best. I think it's like 0.69 or something like that. So he's in there as well. And Van Persie is another one. I think he's the only forward to score more than 260 points twice over a whole career. So he did it for Arsenal and then he did it for Man United the following season. So I think it's obviously you probably have to put him in the Arsenal camp because he played more seasons there. But I remember that season when he played at Man United, the first season when he came and got the league just before Ferguson left. That was a ridiculous season. Like he was straight in. I don't think he scored in the first couple of games, but then he absolutely went nuts in that one. And got his second 260 plus points. So the only forward to do that. Forget Kane, forget Aguero, even forget Suarez. Van Persie was pretty incredible for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it shows. You mentioned Aguero there, and also Van Persie signed with Manchester United, obviously with Arsenal. But there's a real lack of Manchester United and Man City in here.
I know,
and I think partly for Manchester United, for me personally playing it, it's been part of Manchester United's decline. So I started playing, post Van Nistelrooy, post, they weren't even. It wasn't even FPL when they obviously Beckham era was around and all that kind of those types of players. So for me, it was just sort of drips and drabs. And Wayne Rooney, I liked owning as much as I disliked owning. So for Liverpool and Chelsea, for me, were the biggie teams, I think. And I'm not sure if Man City, I think rotate. I don't know whether you two feel this before we move on to virtual FPL matters, but I always think with Man City, I've never really truly enjoyed owning them. Obviously getting a hat-trick from Aguero is great, but there's so many times I've missed Aguero's hat-tricks, and so many times I've had huge red arrows as huge green arrows because of him. So I don't know whether you think that as well, but are Man City an enjoyable team to own players from?
They are when you get it right. I mean, like if I said game week, are you saying like things that are synonymous for players? If I said game week 8, which player would come to mind straight away? Sergio Aguero.
But I also remember all those other game weeks where I didn't own him and he got a hat trick and I went massive red arrow. But I don't really remember those for those other players. So I don't know.
I think, like I said, David Silva's never hit 200 points because like, they're in and out of the team and/or have got like maybe poor like injury records. Like De Bruyne like missed most of the last season, I think it was. Whereas this season he's absolutely incredible. I mean, there's no doubting that Kevin De Bruyne will go down as or right now is one of, if not the best player in the league. But it doesn't always matter for FPL. So yeah, there aren't that many City players. Like Yaya Toure, fine, but that was kind of one season where he was in our teams. Outside of that, he had good spells, but wasn't necessarily in there all the time. And Man United is exactly the same. I've been playing since 2010. I've got good memories of. I think Berbatov scored 5 goals across a double game week. I wouldn't put him in as my favourite ever FPL forward. It's just good moments. So yeah, there's not been enough really.
I had Berbatov written down as well, Andy. I think I had him for both. He scored 4 when he was at Spurs, I think, against Reading, and then he scored 5 for United. So he's sort of cult figure on my forwards list. I'll give a mention to Henry as well. I know we'll want to wrap this up, but very, very early on in the FPL history was he was the Salah of his day. Over 230 points for the first 4 seasons of FPL. Top Marks reckons that if the scoring system had been the same today as it was then, so fantasy assists added and maximum free bonus, he would have beaten Salah's total of 305. I think he scored 271 in the old scoring system, 47 attacking returns without fantasy assists. So he's again, for those with longer memories, he was the go-to man, I think, in the early noughties.
I think I find it interesting because we've all been playing from different periods of FPL or different memories of it as well. And so it's just interesting which teams are dominate our thinking when it comes to FPL players, because sometimes it's not necessarily the best teams or the best players. This is the best FPL players and best teams. And I think consistency of starts, Chelsea for me have been the top FPL team. But who knows in 5 years' time? Maybe they'll be usurped again. Maybe it'll be Brighton. Who knows? And on that note, let's move on to more fantasy, virtual fantasy. Andy, what's been going on in virtual FPL world?
Yeah, so about another 15 game weeks have gone since last week, I think. We're into game week 20 now, so we're already halfway through the season.
Wow. Second
wildcard now available. So just to go really quickly, I was obviously playing aggressive. I went without Liverpool for a few game weeks, which was kind of a mix. Like Trent Alexander-Arnold did well, but then he blanked. So it was kind of all over the place by arrows. So I actually wildcarded last week, so game week 19. The only thing I didn't do, which I kind of talked about doing in FPL, was setting up the bench boost straight after a wildcard. I should have probably done that, but it's a bit late now. I'll probably do that off the second one. So yeah, the only thing I did, I went cheap and I got my Liverpool players. I got the Liverpool players back in. I've got Trent, Robertson, and Alonso at the back now. So I'm going all out attack, and I've got alongside Salah, I've just got value midfielders. So Pulisic, Fernandes, Zaha, and Richarlison. I've gone 5 in midfield and 2 up front. So I've ditched Wolves. I've got Calvert-Lewin and Ings. So yeah, we're already into game week 20. So you can still start. I think you can create mini leagues as well. So if you want to get in and play from now with some friends, obviously it's going to be virtually impossible to win the whole thing. But you never know. How's it going for you, Neale?
You know the answer to that question, Andy.
I haven't checked. Is it still going?
I've got it up on the screen. The Contributors League. So.
I think I'm going to turn into Erling Haaland in this interview and just give you monosyllabic answers. I said on the last appearance, without wanting to mitigate how terribly I'm doing, which is awfully. I've just abandoned all my usual practices in terms of FPL. Just gone full out aggressive, taking more hits already than I have in the entire season of FPL. Captaining players like Jota and Ali and players I would never dream of doing in real life FPL. Sold Salah for a -4, doing stupid stuff like that. So, and as a result, I'm doing abysmally. So yeah, we'll see what we can do in the second half of the season. But it's something I'm involved in more for the right hand side of the site, because I'm the one who writes up the weekly reviews and previews. I hope I'm a better writer of those than I am a player of the game. But I've missed several deadlines already, so I'm ashamed to say that I would never do an FPL. But there's no excuses. I'm terrible at it, and I'm languishing way behind. I mean, Joe, you're not exactly pulling the trees yourself, but I'm about 100 points behind yourself. So
I had this great run of green arrows, and then recently I've had as many red as green. But what I've been doing, I've had some good. I got a 95 the other day, and so what I've been doing is still mostly this balanced approach, still mostly green arrows. So what I've been doing a switcheroo between Salah and a premium forward. So I pinned my hopes last few weeks on Aubameyang, and so he got me like steady. He got me like a goal each match or something. So I should have just kept Salah for the duration for his bad fixtures.
Yeah,
so I've got Salah back now. So Salah will be my captain for the next number of matches. But I've been trying to mix it up a bit, as you were as well. So that's actually worked in my favour by being a bit more aggressive. That's not my usual game. So 1 week I took a -8. I never take -8s usually. I got rid of Perez, Traore and Rashford, who that week got me 5 points, or would have got me 5 points. And I swapped them for Neto, Sané and Ings, who got 31 points. So handsomely paid back there. And I'm very happy with them, although Sané I've just got rid of for Salah. So I've also switched Aubameyang for Calvert-Lewin, who I then captained last week. Got me a goal. So what I've been doing is sort of, there I've got 59 points. That was one of my lower ranks, but I'm sort of around that sort of 60. I'm sort of doing okay, but nothing wow. And but I'm enjoying it. I'm really enjoying virtual FPL. It's really, I'm honing my skills of FPL, and I think that's quite a good thing to do. Try out a few different things. I would never take a -8 and get rid of 3 like mid-price players for 3 other mid-price players, but you know, sometimes
I've certainly never saved my wild card till game week 19. No. That's for sure.
No,
but it was quite good though, because I got Ali in the week before, captain him. I think he got 13 points, and then I got rid of him straight away on my wild card. So it's kind of fun to do that. But yeah, it's not been too bad so far.
I quite like the lack. What I do like about this, and I like about the Sky game as well, is the lack of price movements. And I know a lot of people like that element to the game, but I quite like that because it means you can do various things like switch out players and not worry about they're going to go up in price or down in price, and not get bogged down with that. So that game within a game is gone, and I sort of welcome that. Not to say it's not part of FPL, but it's quite nice to take a break from that element of the game.
I think it's good that there's no double game weeks and blank game weeks as well, because in FPL you tend to use your chips around those times, whereas now you have to really be tactical about it and pick individual game weeks to use them. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be looking to just for tactics around bench boosts and wildcards, etc. For my second wildcard, I think what I'm going to do is bench boost the week before a wildcard. So essentially, I'm going to dead end my team. I'm going to have money in the bank. I'm going to take a mini wildcard, so take a -4. When I've got 2 frees as well, to bolster that bench up for a particular week. I don't know what week that will be. Not when Liverpool have a good fixture, because they're very expensive, but it'll be like when there's cheaper assets and they've got a good fixture, and then I'll use the bench boost for that. It'll probably all go wrong, but even if I get points, my team will look like a mess. So then I'll immediately wildcard that away and then can carry on as normal. But that's sort of what I'm planning. So it's a different game, different rules. Just before we go, anything else to add about our 6-a-side, but also our virtual teams?
Yeah, it'd be good to see people's teams in the comments. They want to do a 6-a-side team. Like I said, 1 goalkeeper, 2 defenders, 2 mids, 1 forward. Only 1 team, though, whatever team they're kind of most remembered for and position. You can't have Bale as a defender. So, yeah, leave a comment below.
Yeah, definitely. A good point there. Do let us know on Twitter as well. We're all on Twitter. Follow Fantasy Football Scout on Twitter at FF Scout, and we're all on Twitter as well. We'll leave our Twitter handles in the article and the blurb for the piece as well. But for now, it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye all.